Welcome and thank you for standing by. Currently, all participants are in listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I'd like to turn the call over to your host for today, Crystal Jimerson.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on exploring government's data using census.gov. My name is Crystal Jimerson, and I'm a data dissemination specialist here at the U.S. Census Bureau. I want to thank you for joining us today for the Exploring the Diversity of Census Bureau Data webinar series. This new series created by the Census Academy team here at the Census Bureau is meant to assist the novice to intermediate data user. These webinars are a great opportunity for you to learn from our experts about how to access the Census Bureau data, tools, and resources. If you wish to follow along, take a moment now to open an additional browser. You can register for any of the webinars by visiting census.gov/academy. Before I introduce today's speakers, let's go over a few important housekeeping rules. As mentioned earlier, this webinar is being recorded. For your convenience, it will be uploaded to our Census Academy site with all supplemental materials relating to the webinar within 30 business days. We welcome written questions during the webinar. Please submit your written questions using the Q&A panel, which is at the bottom center or the right side of your WebEx screen. Please take a moment to locate that now. Once you've found the Q&A panel, make sure you choose all panelists from the drop-down menu. This will ensure we see your question. Also, we ask that you do not include any personal or business identifiable information with your questions. We suggest keeping the chat panel open as we will provide key links and other resources throughout the webinar. Keep in mind you won't be able to respond to the chat. That is for us to send out links and other resources related to the presentation. My colleagues will be monitoring the Q&A panel, and as time allows, we will answer your questions directly through the Q&A panel, or we will share your question with the presenters to respond to during the webinar. If we do not get to all of the questions with the response during the webinar, we will post the questions and responses with the webinar materials on the census.gov/academy site within 30 business days. As you know, we are in a virtual environment and sometimes technical difficulties might occur. If you are having issues, try a different browser such as Chrome or consider logging out and coming back into the session. If you are having audio issues, try selecting the computer audio or calling into the webinar via phone. Now I would like to introduce our speakers, Andrew Soto and Ross Jacobson. Thank you for being here today. Andrew, you may begin.
Thank you, Crystal. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Just would like to introduce my colleague, Ross Jacobson. Ross Jacobson is a survey statistician in the public sector area within the Employment Statistics branch, where he works on the Census of Governments and the Annual Survey of Public Employment and Payroll. Prior to joining the Census Bureau, Ross worked in survey research and analysis for 10 years in the private sector. Ross received a Master of Public Policy from American University and a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Wisconsin. Ross?
Thank you, Andrew. Andrew is a data dissemination specialist at the U.S. Census Bureau in California. During the 2020 census, Andrew collaborated with stakeholders to engage hard-to-count communities in low-response census tracts throughout Los Angeles. Andrew has a master's in public affairs from Sciences Po in Paris, France, and has worked at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in Washington, D.C., as well as the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, with research on rural economic development throughout Italy and housing policy on informal settlements in Johannesburg, South Africa. Andrew previously served as a Fulbright Fellow in rural Spain. One thing I want to note before we begin is that to conserve bandwidth, we are going off camera. Today, we are going to provide a background on census government's data and help inform you of our wide array of government data products. We will also show you where to access this information and my co-presenter Andrew Soto will provide a live demonstration on how to locate and utilize government data. He will specifically focus on the Annual Survey of Public Employment and Payroll, also known as ASPEP. Let's get things started by providing an overview of the different data products the census has that involve government data. Please note, throughout this presentation, we reference governments. And I want to clarify that this refers to the public sector and that these terms are used interchangeably. I also want to make a general comment that many of our data products are actively and continually in the process of publishing. It is possible that some products may have had very recent releases of data that is even more current than the data we are going to show you today. The Census of Governments provides benchmark statistics on public finance and public employment. It is conducted every 5 years, in the years ending in 2 and 7, and includes all governments on our sampling frame. Individual annual surveys are conducted during the years in between censuses, which includes a sample of governments. These surveys consist of the same questions and produce the same statistics as the full census, just based on relatively smaller sample sizes. Although note, the samples are still fairly large. Data is used by the US Congress, federal agencies, state and local governments, educational and research organizations, and the general public. Census of Governments organization includes the Government Units Survey, which is used to update our sampling universe for both the Census of Governments and annual surveys. The Census Bureau also provides several other products involving government data, including quarterly surveys of public pensions and state and local tax revenue, as well as new innovative data products such as monthly selected state tax collections and cannabis excise sales tax collections. Now, let's take a look at each of the annual surveys in more detail. At Census, we have different groups handling local governments and state governments, where they coordinate and combine their results to create the Annual Survey of State and Local Government Finances. Census provides the only comprehensive source of government finance information. Census compiles all government finance data into the same framework, which allows comparability across geographies. Note, this is only government units. It does not include businesses. Also, the classification is by functional category. We do not use NAICS codes or sector. We collect all expenditure data, revenue data, debt flows, and assets held. The figure on the left is based on data from the 2021 Survey of State Government Finances. It shows state government expenditures by source. Current operation expenditures made up the majority of state government expenditures in 2021. The next biggest item was intergovernmental expenditures, which are payments and grants to local and federal governments, including transfers to independent school systems. Intergovernmental expenditures is followed by insurance benefits and repayments. Similar to state and local finance, the Annual Survey of Public Employment and Payroll is for governments only, no businesses. ASPEP measures the month of March and collects data on both full-time and part-time employees, including number of employees and payroll. This survey also produces derived items, including full-time equivalent employees. One of the most interesting and useful aspects of the Annual Survey of Public Employment and Payroll is the functional breakout it provides. In the chart on the left, you can see the functional breakout from the 2022 Census of Governments Survey of Public Employment and Payroll. Keep in mind, this only shows the top 15 functions. This chart gives you an idea of where governments tend to focus the most resources on. Education rises to the top, and that is what we see every year. After that comes hospitals, police protection, and corrections. You can also see some interesting differences by local versus state level government employment. Elementary and secondary education employment is almost entirely at the local level, whereas higher education employment occurs more at the state level. Fire protection is only at the local level. You will see more about how this data can be used when Andrew walks through a demonstration. When we talk about public pensions, we are talking about defined benefit pensions and only public sector pensions. No private pensions or 401k type of accounts. We measure membership by type, total assets invested, all cash flows in and out for contributions, gains on investment, and payments made to beneficiaries. The figure on the left shows some key statistics from the 2020 Annual Survey of Public Pensions. Total assets, including both cash and investments, totaled approximately $4.6 trillion. Earnings on investments were $98.8 million. Earnings on investments make up for most of the deficit between contributions and benefits paid out, and are a critical contributor to the sustainability of pension plans. Total contributions to state and locally administered defined benefit public pension systems totaled $237.7 million. Pension system total membership was 33.2 million. The annual survey of state government tax collections includes data for 5 broad tax categories and up to 25 tax subcategories. The numbers are included in state finance revenues. The chart on the left is a visualization from an interactive tool on census.gov that shows state tax collections per capita from 1980 to 2021. This snapshot specifically focuses in on the states with the greatest state tax collections per capita in 2021, where we can see that the state that collected the most taxes per capita was Vermont at $6,355, followed by California and Connecticut. The Annual Survey of School System Finances is a standalone report that provides deeper information about the financial activity of public elementary and secondary school systems. It breaks down revenue and spending by state and provides statistics on pure pupil spending, capital outlays, indebtedness, and other key variables. The chart on the left shows how COVID-19 affected school finances. This is from an interactive visualization on census.gov. We can see that federal revenues for school systems remained relatively stable from 2013 through 2020, but then increased substantially in 2021 and again in 2022. State and local revenues have trended fairly steadily upwards over the years. Now, let's talk a bit more about the years in which a full census of governments is conducted and some additional information that is released. The census of governments is like any other census, that is, an official enumeration of an entire population. But in this case, the population is state and local governments. All of the annual surveys previously discussed participate in the census of governments. Census of governments is sometimes referred to as COG for short. Questions and the content are the same as in a regular annual survey. This is unlike most other economic surveys at census, which often have additional questions in a census year. In our public sector data products, the difference between a regular year and a census year is the number of units we are surveying. State finance naturally includes all 50 states and Washington, D.C. But local finance, public employment, and public pensions have everyone in the pool for a COG year. COG is every 5 years in the years ending in 2 and 7. Census of governments also includes the government units survey, which updates the list of government units because changes happen all the time. Additionally, during a COG, the individual state descriptions are released by the Public Sector Frame and Classification Branch. A snapshot from the 2022 release is shown on the left. This data product provides information about the organization of state and local governments. There is a separate summary for each state and the District of Columbia. Next, let's take a look at the quarterly surveys, which include government data. These are very valuable to data users due to their timeliness. The quarterly survey of public pensions is not like the annual survey. First, the population surveyed is the largest 100 pension plans. Second, the data variables collected are not the same as the annual survey. Quarterly pensions is considered an economic indicator survey. That means by keeping track of how these large pension plans adjust their investment portfolios in response to economic conditions, we can determine some larger shifts in the market in the economy that are harder to measure. The figure on the left shows total cash and security holdings from 2020 to 2023 by quarter. Keep in mind, these are not seasonally adjusted. The scale just labels quarters 1 and 3 for each year, but quarters 2 and 4 data points are reflected in the graph. As you can see, cash and security holdings increased from Q1 2020 through Q4 2021, followed by a decline from Q4 2021 to Q3 2022, and then an increase after that, but not as high as Q4 2021 peak levels. Quarterly tax, or QTax, is another economic indicator survey. It is an estimate of tax collections. QTax is not the final value, but rather a point-in-time measurement. QTax provides early clues as to changes in tax collection, which can help predict economic shifts. For example, if QTax indicates a drop in sales tax collections, that might indicate people are purchasing less, and therefore the economy might experience some contraction. Researchers can learn many things from these advanced indicators. The chart on the left shows national totals of state and local tax revenue from 2020 through 2023. The low point within these years was in the second quarter of 2020. Monthly selected state tax collections is a relatively new data product the census offers, which provides extremely timely data. It has been produced since 2020, with data going back to 2019. It is conducted fully through the use of administrative records, and therefore no respondent surveying is needed. Web scraping is used to automate a substantial portion of the data collection process, which aids in our ability to release this data so frequently. The chart on the left is from an interactive visualization on our website. This shows monthly collections for May 2020 general sales taxes, which are based on April 2020 sales. The graphic says April, but note that April is the accrual month, and that the taxes are actually collected in the following month. This chart helps illustrate what happened in the first full month of the pandemic. General sales taxes were down markedly in every state. Note the 5 states in gray do not have a general sales tax. Cannabis excise sales tax collections is a new experimental product that captures state excise tax on both medical and recreational cannabis. This chart is from an interactive visualization on census.gov. It shows quarterly revenue for Q3 of 2023. States with the highest percent total tax revenue were Colorado, Montana, and Alaska. Revenues for these states exceeded 1%. Now, let's take another look at the annual survey of public employment and payroll. Just to make sure this is fresh in your mind, since this is going to be the subject of the demonstration my co-presenter Andrew is going to provide next. Note, we have also recently released 2023 for this survey. We are highlighting 2022 data because Andrew is going to showcase the 2022 data set for how to address a data user's question. Keep in mind, the data user may find value in both 2022 and 2023. We were going to focus on 2022, since that is the census of governments, which will have every single unit available in our individual unit files for the data user to look at. One other thing I want to point out about this data that I did not mention earlier is that many of our data users will use the data we provide to calculate average pay. For example, some data users will take full-time payroll and divide that by full-time employees to derive full-time average pay. This can be very valuable in getting a sense of how much individual employees are paid in certain geographic regions or job functions on average. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to my co-presenter, Andrew Soto, who's going to provide a demonstration of how our data can be used.
Thank you, Ross. Welcome everyone for a use case scenario using the 2022 annual survey of public employment and payroll data for local wage analysis. In this use case scenario, a representative of a local elementary and secondary school district in California wants to determine whether a market adjustment is needed in full-time instructional employee salaries in order to remain competitive. Ross, thank you for joining today's session on leveraging the annual survey of public employment and payroll data. I know you're well versed in data analysis, so let's dive right into the technical details. For your use case of evaluating instructional staff salaries against the market, we want to look at the most recent 2022 ASPEP release. Let's start by going to the ASPEP website by navigating to the Surveys and Programs tab at census.gov, at census.gov/program surveys/apes.html. We want to click through the data link on the left-hand sidebar. We then navigate and click on the Annual Survey of Public Employment and Payroll Data Sets and Tables. Here, you find the publishable aggregated data files and the Local Government Employment and Payroll Excel file contains the summary data at state and function level. On this Excel sheet, we see California's elementary and secondary instructional data. Key figures to note are the 362,059 full-time employees and the well over here we go. This is like 1,938,146,910 full-time monthly payroll as of March 2022. And if we divide that payroll by the employment figures, we arrive at a roughly average salary of gross $8.1 thousand.
Got it. Thanks, Andrew. That state level average is a good benchmark. Though for our analysis, we really need to compare to other districts more similar to ours in size, demographics, cost of living, and so forth.
In that case, this is where the individual unit files come in. These published files have unit level data that you can filter and analyze at a more granular level.
Perfect. This is huge. I'm seeing payroll and employment numbers for individual school districts across California now. I can compare our salaries to neighboring districts, districts of a similar student population size, or any other cohorts that make sense.
Exactly. And you have the full flexibility to benchmark against the most relevant peers. You cannot beat this level of granular data published anywhere else. And if you want to explore further, this data is also available, aggregated and disaggregated, through our flagship data tool at data.census.gov.
This is amazing. Thank you for the comprehensive training, Andrew. Having access to these ASPEP data resources will allow us to thoroughly analyze our market competitiveness and propose data-driven salary adjustments if needed.
Thank you, Ross. Moderators, do we have any questions from the audience?
There are a few. One in particular is referring to the FIPS codes. See if I can again. Are the data from the surveys connected to FIPS codes? I'd be interested in linking the data with census geography boundaries. So would a FIPS code be, would you be able to pull data by FIPS codes?
So I know that we generally are using Gov's code, although it might vary by survey, which is a different classification system. I'm sure there are ways to crosswalk Govs to FIPS. If you just look those up, there should be something available online to be able to crosswalk Govs to FIPS if needed. And from there, you could figure out the state. And again, this might depend on survey. If there's a specific question you have for a specific survey program, then we are providing a government, a different slide of different data contacts for each program. And if you want some more details for each specific survey in particular, then I would advise reaching out to them for further details.
And I can elaborate just on what Ross just said. So if you go and download our data from data.census.gov, which is the Census Bureau's standard device dissemination tool, those will come with the standardized state or FIPS codes that are consistent across the entire Bureau. The one thing I tried to mention in my answer in the chat was that When you start looking at the local governments, when we publish totals of basically all the locals summed together for a given state. If we're trying to track if at one particular local government, we need to go into our individual unit files, which breaks down, by government. And in those individual unit files, currently it depends on the individual unit file we use, employment and local finance. Do have FIPS and county FIPS in there. We are actually undergoing a standardization process currently to try to make sure all of our individual unit files that lowest granular level of data we have is consistent across the board, which should hopefully be implemented in the next release of all of our publications. But it is currently there. It's in most places. It's down to the county FIPS that we provide, state and county. If there's a suggestion to provide even more detail, we can actually look at having that as a piece of feedback.
Very good, thank you. One more I'd like to bring up. Public pensions, state and local, are only the top 100. What if I want to see my city or county? Now, this was answered in the Q&A, but would you like to expand on that?
I can expand on that as well. I understand my volume is low. I apologize. I wasn't supposed to be a presenter, so I didn't test my audio. Hopefully everyone can hear me. So pensions has a couple different products. So our quarterly pensions product is a panel survey and does follow the top 100 pension plans over time. If you are looking for more detail, the annual pensions program, which is just done on a yearly basis by fiscal year, is a sample of the entire pensions, entire defined benefits pensions universe, which I believe currently the sample is I shouldn't pull numbers out of my hat, but I believe it's somewhere around 1,600 pensions. And then, as Ross was mentioning, in years that end in 2 and 7, we do the full census of governments, which we collect data, on our entire frame, and that covers then data on our entire universe, which for 2022, I believe was around 4,500. And then there's in between years, we do a sample of that entire universe. See, weight and adjust our data up to the US and national totals up to that census figure. So hopefully that helps. But the other quarterly is just meant to follow that top 100 and over a plethora of years. I believe it's been almost maybe more than a decade at this point.
Very good, thank you. Mac, did you see any other questions in the Q&A that would be good for the group?
Yeah, so there was one last question that came up. Will the 2022 local government revenue and expenditure data be published for individual jurisdictions?
If by jurisdictions you mean, we will publish each parent government, so counties, townships, cities. If it is a standalone government, we will publish it in our individual unit file. And I apologize if I'm being told I can't be heard again. I can answer it in the chat as well.
All right, well, thank you very much. I think that's all we have right now, but if your question did not get answered in the Q&A, then our presenters will respond later on when they are able to sort through this and get back to you that way. Back to you, Andrew.
Thank
to
you, Mrs. Christo.
moderators, and to Michael Reich, our subject matter expert. To recap, my colleague Ross provided background information on census government's data, and we learned about useful government data products that may inform your work. We also gained an understanding of where to access the data through a use case scenario of the 2022 ASPEP dataset. The Census Bureau has a team of data dissemination specialists throughout the United States who can assist in bringing the world of census data to you by providing trainings, workshops, and presentations to you and your organization at no cost. Please reach out at census.askdata@census.gov if any data stakeholders would like a data workshop, accessing Census Bureau data in person or via webinar. On behalf of the DDTB at the U.S. Census Bureau, thank you for joining us this afternoon for the Exploring Government Data webinar. Back to you, Ross.
Thanks, Andrew. And thank you, everyone. If you have any questions regarding government data at the Census Bureau, please reach out. If they aren't already answered by the chat or anything you've asked today, you think of something later, or you just have further questions or haven't gotten something answered, definitely please reach out to the relevant government data contact, which will be in the slide deck that's going to be made available sometime after the presentation. Thanks, everyone. And these are the government data contacts, just for reference. You will see these. This will all be in the presentation that you get later, so don't feel like you need to make note of them right now.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Was that all, Andrew and Ross?
Yes,
Yep,
back to
that's it.
Crystal.
Okay, thank you. And thank you so much again for this great presentation. Before we conclude, I'd like to thank everyone who played a role in today's webinar. We thank you, our audience, for spending your time with us this afternoon. We are very interested in hearing from you on how we are doing. Please take a moment to fill out the evaluation that will appear when you exit the webinar. Look out for the recording, presentation, and related materials from this webinar on the Census Academy by visiting census.gov/academy within 30 business days. Please check out the Census Academy for additional trainings, resources, and to register for upcoming webinars. That brings us to a close. We thank you again for joining us today and hope you have a great afternoon.
This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect at this time.